Everything is political. So for 5 weeks, we're going to jump into the mess of politics. Hey, okay. Yeah, three is a good start. Got a lot of work to do to win the other 485 of you in here over. You know, politics is near and dear to my heart. And I've shared this multiple times. I think y'all think it's a joke every time, but it's not a joke. When I first started college, I was a political science major, and my dream was to be president of the United States. And if you had asked me when I was that political science major, hey, walk me through the plan, I was like, the plan is political dominance. You know, that's it. But I wouldn't just say that I wanted to be president of the United States. I would tell you, this is when I will become president of the United States. It will be 2024. That this was the election that I had circled this particular year because I would have qualified to run for president in the last election, but I thought at 36 that was a little presumptuous and that I should say, you know what, let me just give myself a little bit more time. So 2024 was the year that I had circled on my calendar, and that is when I would be winning the election and then moving into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and we would have had a party. You could have all come. It would have been fine. It would have been fantastic. I don't know if you knew this, but the White House used to be open to people on Inauguration Day. People could walk in. They've done away with that. They frown upon just letting strangers walk in the warehouse. You never know sometimes. The White House now, and there's like gates and fences and guns and all kind of, it's great. But you know, I think we probably could have made an exception for all of you. I think you seem to be decent people, at least as of right now. At least the three of you that were excited to talk about this today. You would have been invited. Over the next 5 weeks, I want to be crystal clear with you, though. I have an enormous-sized political opinion about everything. And honestly, in my heart, I believe I could fix it all if they would just give me a chance. But what I found over the last 20 years is that I've got to love people more than politics. And so what I give you my word about is for the next 5 weeks, there is no hidden agenda. I have zero desire to tell you how to vote or to sway you one way or the other. Now, I really don't want to talk about D.C. as much as I want to talk about you and me. Political. Of or relating to a government or the conduct of government. Merriam-Webster's unabridged dictionary puts it this way: a politic person, especially a shrewd and crafty schemer. Political, politician, politics, today seems to have a fairly negative connotation attached to it. But to be honest with you, I'm not sure if it's just today. Let's go back to 1955. This was written by a reporter. It says this. It says a reporter, and by the way, in 1955, they spoke a different kind of English than I speak today, so I'm going to try to read it, but just bear with me, okay? A reporter put to President Eisenhower recently an inquiry of this type. They already sound smarter. Like, they just sound smart in 1955. They put to President Eisenhower recently an inquiry of this type. The newsman asked the president how he liked, quote, the game of politics, end quote. Quick as a wink, Mr. Eisenhower said to his questioner that he was mouthing a derogatory phrase. Being president, Ike conceded, is, quote, a very fascinating experience. Grimacing, he added, but the word politics, I have no great liking for that. Be honest with you, though, I think the negative connotation with politics goes back even further than the 1950s. I'll read this quote to you, and this is for sure not the English I speak anymore, but I'm going to give it a shot. We're going to put this one on the screen. Get thee glass eyes, and like a scurvy politician, seem to see the things thou dost not. That was actually kind of fun. I stumbled through it at the 9, but now I'm feeling confident. I'm going to do it again. Get thee glass eyes, and like a scurvy politician, seem to see the things thou dost not. Anybody know where it comes from? Anybody? Shakespeare. Hey, who said Shakespeare? Hey. Zero chance I'm acknowledging you with that Yankee gear on. Yeah. 126 days till spring training. Go Braves. Shakespeare, King Lear, 1623. Politics. Be honest with you, I don't think it just goes back to the 1950s or to the 1620s. I think politics has been a part of mankind for a really long time. Next 5 weeks, we're going to take a look at one of the most political stories in the entirety of the Bible. And it's my hope that we can learn a little about what to do and what not to do. Let me give you our setting. Let's start with who? There's a guy by the name of Jacob. Jacob has another name that's been given to him. The name is Israel. So Jacob, Israel, same person. Now you might be thinking, if you're new to Bible study, like, hold on, weren't there like the Jews called like the Israelites? Yes, yeah, absolutely. So it's from this particular lineage, Jacob / also known as Israel, that we end up like identifying an entire people group because of this guy, Jacob, who's kind of the starter. He's the father of, in this particular story. Now, when we look at Jacob, Jacob's got about a dozen sons. Not about, he has a dozen sons. He has a dozen sons. One of them is named Joseph. In this particular part of the Bible, Joseph is 17 years old. So Joseph's got 11 brothers. He's one of a dozen sons. And his father's name is Jacob, also known as Israel. Now, when you think about it, in the big story of the Bible, Jacob's father was named Isaac. Isaac is famous for his father almost sacrificed him. If you remember that part of the story of the Bible, it's really wild to think that that would have taken place in the Bible, but they don't. That's the great thing about biblical authors is they put their dirty laundry out there for everyone and say, hey, this is what happened. It is what it is. We're not going to like sugarcoat it or pretend we did everything right. Here's the truth. Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac. Abraham was Isaac's father. And so you got Abraham. He's probably one of the most famous figures in the Bible. He's renowned in 3 different world religions, in Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And Abraham is out there. Abraham has Isaac. Isaac has really a couple sons, Jacob and Esau. Jacob is the one we're focusing on. Jacob, also known as, anybody? Israel. That's right. And in particular, Jacob, or Israel, has 12 sons, and he has a favorite. It says this in Genesis 37, verse 3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. Now, here's the deal. For those of you who grew up in church and maybe went to a thing that used to be called Sunday school, and in Sunday school we have these boards. They were made of felt. And on those felt boards, you have characters that you moved around and you told stories on. Anybody remember those things? Anybody? Okay, got a few, right? So on this, we would always have Joseph, and Joseph had this long robe with these like colors all over, coat of many colors. Now, I do want to set the record straight. In every single felt depiction of Joseph I have seen, the 17-year-old boy was white with blue eyes and brownish blonde hair. Joseph was not that. He lived in the Middle East. He was far from white, and I guarantee he didn't have blue eyes, okay? But that's what Joseph is. Joseph's 17 years old. He's living in the Middle East, right? He's a young guy. His family's doing some shepherding, and he's the favorite child. Now, for those of you who have children, multiple kids, if you only have one, you don't get to answer this. If you have more than one kid, let's be honest, who has a favorite kid? Just raise your hand. Oh, we got like 6? Okay. Hey, you're sitting next to just one of them that I see. That's right. Right? Now, let me ask it a different way. If you grew up with siblings, how many of you are the favorite kid? Yeah, now truth comes out. That's right. That's right. Everyone who just raised their hand, you must be the firstborn. You know, I know the babies raised their hand, but that's... He has this favorite son, his name's Joseph. He gives him this really special coat. Already you can see like the beginnings of politics taking place. There's some favoritism, there's preferential treatment. There's the guy that's in charge, this patriarch, is showing favoritism to one particular child. You can imagine what it must be like to have 11 siblings and for you to know Dad favors me. Not just I think, but I have visible proof that I put on every morning to walk around that says, hey, I am the favorite, you know? And then what it must be like for his older brothers to live in that reality of, what has this kid even done other than he came out of mama when Dad was really old? Like, other than that, what is he good for? You know what I'm saying? Like, he's never done anything. Joseph has a dream. And in this dream, he wakes up and he has like this internal dialogue that has to take place. He has this dream and he's thinking, what should I do with this vivid, detailed dream? And he says to himself, you know what? I should tell this dream to my older brothers. And so he gathers them together and he's like, guys, I had this crazy dream. And they're like, oh, yeah. Now, in my mind, the Bible doesn't say this, but in my mind, this feels like a fairly common occurrence. Like, we share dreams. Like, when you have a crazy dream, I'm sure you probably shared your dream with people you care about, and then probably just strangers as it came up. I was like, I had a dream about that the other day. I was naked and falling out of the water, and I was drowning, and I couldn't, like that. Like, y'all share those? No, y'all not? Okay, just me. But we share dreams with each other. Like, that's what's happening. That's what's taking place. And so he just gathers them together. And he's like, hey, I wanted to share this dream I had with y'all. And it's like, all right, tell me about this dream. And so he starts it out. He's like, man, we were in the field and we were cutting down grain. Like, we were cutting down grain. We were making bundles of grain, these sheaves of grain. And all of a sudden, my grain stood up. And I'm sure his brother was like, what? Children of the corn? What is happening? What is happening? The grain is standing up? This is wild. What happens next? He's like, you're not going to believe it. Your grain stood up too. And they're like, let's go. Our grain's coming to life. He's like, yeah, here's what happened. And then all of your grain gathered around my grain and bowed down to it. Yeah, and they were like, no. Yeah, no. Joseph, Genesis 37:8 records their reaction. It says, his brother said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Now, hold on. The boy just shared a dream. And the response is, they hated him more because of his dream. Think about that. They hated him more because of his dream. That's wild. So Joseph carries on. He's like, noted, gotcha. He has another dream. He wakes up from this dream and he thinks to himself, I should probably tell my brothers what this dream's about too. And so this time though, he doesn't just gather his brothers, gets his dad too. And he tells him the dream. He's like, look, I had this dream, super vivid, all these details. Here it is. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars gathered around me and bowed down to me. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars. I don't think you have to guess who the 11 stars are and who the sun and the moon are. We see the reaction, verse 10 and 11 of chapter 37. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now, I want to point out something before we move forward. Like his father hears the dream, and he's like, what is going on? Now the response, like the summary response the biblical author gives us, is that the brothers were jealous, but of the father it says that he decided to keep this in mind. In other words, he heard what Joseph said, and his response wasn't jealousy or hatred, it was curiosity. He was like, oh, hold on. Is this what you're saying? Are you saying that we're gonna bow down to you? Are you saying that we're gonna come to you and we're gonna fall on our faces in front of because of who you are? And that for the brothers created jealousy and, as the first one, hatred. And for the father, though, it created a curiosity of, let me ask some more questions. And then the summarizing statement from the biblical author is, it was something that the father wanted to think about more. Very vastly different approaches to hearing something that they didn't like, that threatened them, that made them even maybe feel a little less than. We fast forward, Jacob's sons, not Joseph, because he was a favorite. The rest of them, they were out tending some sheep. They were sheep herders. And the dad said, hey, will you go check on your brothers? Bring me a report. Tell me how the flock's doing. Tell me how the boys are doing. Just go do a report and come back. Now, this wasn't a request for him to like go to the back 40 and like spend like 30 minutes walking out there. This is a big deal. So the places that they were doing this sheep herding was a city called Shechem. Shechem was about 50 miles north of where Joseph lived. And that's where they had taken the sheep for this particular season because that's where the resources were. And so for a sheep, obviously, you got to have like resources there and where they live in particular. It wasn't like it was flourishing. And so they moved the herd around. And so this particular time of the year, they had moved north 50 miles to Shechem. And so he said, hey, it's time. Well, let's go check in. Come give me a report. Tell me how it's going. So he went out that way. So he headed to Shechem. When he gets to Shechem, to the fields they typically would take their sheep to graze, there's nobody there. They're empty. It's gone. Like, and he's looking all over the place. He's like, there's the boys are gone. The sheep is gone. He sees a guy that's walking across the field, and he says, hey, have you seen like a bunch of I would call them troublemakers. Definitely not the favorites of my father, but have you seen them around here? There's 10 of them. They're walking in and around. Any chance they got a bunch of sheep with them also? And like, yes, actually. They moved on because, as you can see, there's nothing here. They moved a little further north to a city called Dothan, about 15 miles north further than where he'd already gone. So he's about 65 miles from home, right? 65 miles from home. And finally he comes across, and I don't know if he heard them in the distance, doesn't tell us. It just says he finally finds them right around Dothan. And Genesis 37:18 picks up what takes place next. It says, but they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. That escalated quickly. Like, what? Who are these people? Are these not the people that are God-fearing descendants of Abraham? Like, what are we thinking? Pause. Your little brother has a couple dreams, gets a fancy jacket, and you're so disgusted with him that your thought is, we should kill the little booger. That's what we should do. In fact, let us, all of them together, like in cahoots together, was like, we should take him out. They see him walking. And I don't know if he was walking in the sunshine, right, with his coat of many colors just gleaming. I don't know if it like sparkled in their eye. Like, oh, I hate sparkle. I don't know. But something took place. And they're like, let's just kill him. Let's just kill him. Verse 19. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. What? All over some dreams? They would kill their little brother? We fast forward just 5 verses. It says this, as they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Now, the Ishmaelites, if we know the whole biblical story, we get a little bit of context because the Ishmaelites are a group of people that only exist because not their father or their grandfather, but their great-grandfather, Abraham, he got a little spicy with his wife's servant and had a son. And that son, name's Ishmael, and then from him, this is where this crew comes from. And so they're going to Egypt, and as they're headed to Egypt, they've got all these things that they're trading, and they're going to make happen. And so they have this idea when they see them. They're like, you know what? Hold on. Maybe we shouldn't kill them. Maybe there's something worse than killing them, right? Let's sell them into slavery, right? Let's sell them into slavery. And then what we'll do is we'll take his coat. We'll rip it up into pieces. We will slaughter a goat. We will put the coat in the goat's blood. We will then take it to our dad, and we will tell him, oh, sorry, an animal got him. So sad, you know? Dang, we wish he wasn't traveling alone, like that kind of thing. And then we'll just tell dad that's what happened. We will sell him to these Ishmaelites. They're going to sell him to Egypt. He's going to be so far away. Let's do that. Let's make that happen, right? That's what they're going to do. So that's what they do. They go back to their dad. They've sold him. He's gone. Joseph is who knows where now, headed towards Egypt. They took his coat, cut it up, shred it up, put it in goat's blood. They take it before their dad, and that's what they tell him. Sorry, Dad. He gone, you know? What a shame. Now, here's the thing. All of them know what happened for real. And every single one of them have to watch their dad do what I'm about to describe. It says, then Jacob, or Israel, then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son for many days. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. No, he said, I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave. And so his father wept for him. What? Like, I get it if his dad is like, well, I told y'all boys to be careful, you know? Like, I get that. But that's not it, you know? Like, he's like in full-fledged mourning. Like 100%. Clothes are torn. Like absolutely wrecked by the news. So much so he says, you can't come, I don't even want your comfort. This will not be solved or fixed in me until I myself am in the grave. And they just let their dad live in this lie. They just watch him go through what he goes through, and in their mind, they're like, we could stop this at any moment. But you know what? We hate Joseph so much. I'm willing to watch this play out. We have such an enormous distaste for his dreams. We actually prefer to watch our father mourn and suffer as opposed to seeing what would actually happen if Joseph were still a part of their life. They just let him live in a lie. So, let's get political. The political move. Get rid of people you feel threatened by. That's the political move. Get rid of people you feel threatened by. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, this is an overture to assassination attempt on Trump, and that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, if that's where you're at, you've missed the whole point of what we're doing here. This has nothing to do with Washington, D.C., and everything to do with you and me. Everything to do with you and me. Because I believe that Jesus has way more say in our day-to-day lives than anyone else that sits in any elected office. Which means that we have to think about our lives through our own actions, not through the actions of some political figure or political party, but it's about me and you. Me and you. Now, I know we can be convinced that there are some things we can vote on that influence who you and I are, and that is true. Yeah, it is true, right? But all of those things are so small relative to the reality of our lives every single day. This is what I know about the church. Let's just talk about it for a second. Every single time the church has been overly persecuted, where someone says, you know what, you can't exist anymore, I'm taking your rights away. Guess what the church did? Every time. No exceptions. It grew. So you think I'm afraid of either political party influencing anything about anything our church does? Zero chance. Bring it. We will just be stronger. I don't care if a Republican comes for something or a Democrat comes for something. I've got world history on my side. And guess who ordains the history of our world? Jesus. So my life doesn't rise and fall on the ebbs and flows of a political system. It stands on the kingdom of God, that even the gates of hell, the fire that's lit on those, don't even start to touch my comfort in terms of me in kingdom living. So I'm not talking about politics, though maybe everything is political. I'm talking about me and you. So let's talk about this political move and how we get rid of people that we're threatened by. I put a list together of practical ways we get rid of people. Number one, exclusion or isolation. We just avoid involving them anymore. They think differently than we do. They change their mind about an issue, and so we just don't invite them. Like we're just like, I'm not inviting that into my house anymore. They're not welcome at Thanksgiving dinner or fill in the blank. But they're out of my friend group. I'm gonna change the group text. You know, that's what we're gonna do. We withhold invitations. We just give them the silent treatment, right? And then, man, we're so good at this. We're so good at this. You want a power move? Let me just give you a secret, a social interaction power move. I'm just gonna give it to you for free, right? And man, you want to play politics with somebody? Do this. Allow someone that you disagree with wholeheartedly to be in conversation with someone that you know that you really like, right? Like let's just pretend. Picture the person, because everybody's got that face. Somebody that like thinks differently about you than something that's really important to you, right? Probably something political. Think about that person's face. And now let's pretend that they're talking to someone that you are on the same page with, okay? Now you have both faces. You got the face of the person you disagree with, the face of the person that you're like aligned with. You're like BFF, brothers from another mother, whatever it is, right? That's the person. Let's say they're talking together like in a public setting. Here's your power move, right? Walk up in between them to the person that you are in lock and step with, shake their hand, give them some bro dap, say, man, it's so good to see you. Ask about the family, talk for a second, this and the other. Ask a couple really great questions. Say, man, it is so good to see you today. Man, we've got to get together. We've got to get together. You promise? Promise. And as you're leaving, turn to the other person's way and just give them a wink and then walk away. Just walk away. You want to make someone feel small? Just do that. They'll pretend they're not small, but on the inside, they're this tiny. Because I just showed, I don't even know if you exist. I winked at you for a moment just to let you know that I'm way more powerful and sophisticated than you are, that I can stand in your place and you don't bother me one single solitary bit. In fact, you don't bother me so much that I can smile at you and still not think about you. We can be political. Or maybe it's not exclusion or isolation. Maybe we just undermine and sabotage them. We discredit their work, right? Because we got a problem, right? Somebody comes out and says, hey, this is important to me. This is a big deal politically to me. And all of a sudden we're like, okay, I didn't see that one coming. I didn't pick you for that, you know? And so we got to figure out, all right, how do we engage with this? Well, now we've got a decision to make. What if they do some incredible work? What if they do some great work? Stuff that's actually legitimately good. Like, man, this is good. This is solid. This is a great contribution to our community or to the workplace or whatever. But I don't want to say or point out how great they did, because then people might ask them, what do you think about this? And they think so differently than I do that we're just going to pretend. We don't want to endorse one thing because we disagree with this other thing. And so we don't want to do that. So we're going to pretend it didn't happen. Or we're just going to discredit it. Or we're just going to gossip about it. This is the way we gossip about it. This is the way we justify it, is we gossip about it and we call it warnings. We talk to somebody and say, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. I saw her hit this like button on this post the other day. Just letting you know this is where she is. Oh, hey, dude, I just want to make sure you knew. You knew. I mean, there's no reason for you to be having the conversation. Like, there's not a conversation coming. There's not a big meeting. There's not a problem. It's just like, oh, by the way, man, I know sometimes you run into them. I just want to let you know. I mean, they took it down real quick, but I did see them share this, and they were like, I better not share this. So they pulled it down, but we know now. We know. Just wanted to warn you. What we don't do is we don't go to the person and say, hey, here's the thing. I saw what you posted the other day, and I thought about 6 different ways to be passive aggressive and post to you without tagging you, though I know you read all my posts. So I'd be talking to you even though I wouldn't have to acknowledge that I was actually talking to you. I thought about that and I realized that'd be pretty selfish. And so I thought I should probably just come to you and say, hey, I don't understand why you think the way you think on this. And here's why, because this is where I'm at on this. But I knew of all the people I could probably trust you to tell you I disagree with you. And I'm only sharing this because truth is I need someone to share the opposite point of view. Because I was brought up to know I don't actually know what I don't know. And I don't think you can change my mind, but I am genuinely curious. Share your heart with me. I promise you I'm in a safe place. And even if we disagree on this particular issue, it's not going to make me think that you're less of a human or less valuable to your kids that you parent, or a lesser part of the community we live in. We don't do that. And maybe it's because we're afraid that they'll look at us and say, sure, you want to know what I think. Yeah, I get it. We know how to be political. The truth is, we actually do have to want to know how they think. We have to be curious enough to say, hey, no, I really do think I'd love to hear your heart on this. Or maybe we delegitimize their authority or their expertise. We dismiss their ideas or opinions. We question their credibility. Or maybe even sometimes when we have the opportunity, we take credit. We create obstacles by setting unrealistic expectations or micromanaging or sabotaging opportunities that they might have. Here's the one we're best at: emotional manipulation or gaslighting. We cause them to doubt themselves, or we invalidate their feelings or concerns. Let's talk about this one for a second. This is probably one of the most popular ones. So a few days ago, I asked on my Facebook page, hey, what's the single most important issue that's causing you to vote one way or the other? And I put some rules with it. I was like, please don't explain why or what the issue is. Just keep it to, here's the issue, right? And we had a bunch of different people that put it on there. And then some people started to respond, and I just started deleting all that. I didn't want that. I just wanted to know, hey, what are the issues? And some people had one issue, some people had a couple issues. But most everybody had one issue. It was like, man, this is the thing for me. Like this right here is really important to me. Now, let me just make sure we put this in a holistic perspective. Let's take the issue of immigration for a second, right? So let's say you've got a family or a particular person that says, hey, I want to vote in a particular way because I came here legally. And I came here legally, and I went through all of those, all the pitfalls and all the hurdles, and I did everything the right way. And man, it's just important to me that I don't want to devalue what my family trusted me to do, and they sacrificed for me to be here. And like, I don't want to devalue that. And I honestly think it made me a better person going through the process. And then so that's important to me. It's important to me. And I don't want my family's sacrifice to go in vain. And so this is the single biggest issue to me. And this is why I'm going to vote this way, right? And you have the other side of the issue. Maybe you have someone that you deeply care about that's here illegally, right? And you would say, hey, I can't imagine life without them. I mean, they've been here for maybe a decade, 2 decades, and you're like, I just can't fathom. I can't fathom not living with them. I can't fathom life. I just can't imagine, like, my world would be wrecked. And I get it that it wasn't in line with the law. Like, I get it. But I don't know how to. So the most important thing to me is I want to vote for someone who's going to make what is illegal legal for them. And that's the only thing that matters to me. That's the only thing that matters. I get that right now it's against the law, but I'm going to vote for someone who's going to change that and to make it to where it's okay for her to stay or him to stay. 2 very different sides of that argument, both incredibly important to both people. Yet we will sit in our Facebook worlds or our news worlds and we will make it about a word, immigration. But nothing is about words. Everything is about people. And you have to understand that both sides of that issue, those people are enormously invested in their own argument. You know, a lot of times we will hear people say, well, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, right? I have yet to meet very few people, and I've had a lot of political conversations. I have very few people that are across the board agree with everything in a political platform. Very few. Most people are voting because of 1 or 2, maybe 3 issues that they are passionate about. And it's issues that are going to impact their life. And as they see how their life is oriented, like that's what they're voting for. And so when we show up and we invalidate their feelings, logically it might make sense to us. Like, well, A plus B equals C. And that's the way it is. Until you involve people and the reality of this is deeply personal. Not because of a law written on a piece of paper or a set of expectations. Not because I went through all the hoops and this, that, and the other. It's just people are complex. And when we invalidate either side and just brush it aside like, well, you're wrong, without taking the time to say, hey, explain to me why you're so passionate about this particular issue. I still might not agree with you, but at least I want to know why this is such a heart thing for you. Because the truth is, when people are really passionate, it's seldomly about a platform or about words on a page. It's about a life experience. And so what we see is red or blue. Really is flesh and blood. If it's not emotional manipulation or gaslighting, it's public shaming or criticism. We call them out in front of others, or we ridicule or mock them. Or maybe it's we encourage conflict. We set them up against others. We fuel rivalries. Or maybe we're just really great at passive-aggressive behavior, where we delay responses for weeks. We pretend we're ignorant, or we just completely ignore any contribution that they've made. We're really good at getting rid of people that threaten us. And when I shared the story with you earlier, I left a part out intentionally. I want to take us back to the part I left out. It happens just after they decide to kill him, and just before they decide to sell him. It's going to introduce another name into the story. The name is Reuben. Reuben is the oldest brother. Verse 21 of chapter 37 says this: when Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. You see, Reuben knew better. Now, here's the thing. Reuben almost got it right. Almost. And this is what I want to avoid with everyone who calls Foundation home. I don't want to almost get it right for the next 5 weeks. I want to get it right. We can look at this and see Reuben saved his life, but Reuben was still a coward. Reuben said, okay, just leave him in a cistern. And secretly he was like, once I get y'all occupied, I'm going to come back. I'm going to get him out. I'm going to take him to dad. Now, why is he going to take him to dad? Because once he tells dad what happened, and for sure Joseph was going to tell dad what happened, right? He's a favorite. Once he told dad what happened, Joseph would go into witness protection with dad, right? Like, he's never leaving his side. Next time they go to Dothan, zero chance he's being sent out there. This boy is about to live like a king. They might actually have to bow down because their dad's going to crack a whip and says, I cannot believe you did that to him. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what's going to happen. But that's what he was thinking. I'm going to get him to dad. Dad's going to solve this whole thing. Dad's going to make sure that he's fine. But I'm going to do it secretly. Why? Because I know it's the right thing to do, but I don't have enough courage to say it in front of everybody else. And that's what we can't get wrong over the next 5 weeks, church. Our church has to be known in the midst of a political season as a place of belonging, not as a place of division. And not because it's a utopia and everybody belongs here, but because Jesus created every single person that will enter a ballot box. And Jesus cares for every single person that will go to a ballot box. And because of that, we have a responsibility to do what? Let Jesus lead. In other words, we follow Jesus. And if Kamala or Trump wants to challenge me on that, bring it. Bring it. I serve the God with cattle on 1,000 hills. Billions are nothing to him. Nothing. We got to get it right. The truth is, man, there's some incredibly educated people in this room that have spent time looking into these issues. And that's the right thing to do. That's time well spent. You should know what you believe and why you believe about it, even if it's politics. You should be able to articulate that. You should be able to have an argument or a nice, like a healthy conflict argument that says, no, let me give you my position. I want to hear your position, but let's go back and forth. Let's go back and forth. You should be able to do that. You shouldn't be afraid of someone from the other political party asking you hard questions. You shouldn't say, well, I'm just going to, you shouldn't do that. You should be able to stand there and say, honestly, that's a good point. I don't know. But if you give me 24 hours, I'll figure it out. I'll go do the research. You're right. I haven't done the research on this. We should be able to have those conversations. We can't get it wrong where one of two things happens over the next 5 weeks. When we hear people bashing people that don't think like us, we can't secretly go behind and say, hey, I just want to let you know, I don't think you're, polyps. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that. I know they think that, but I don't think that. No, we've got to stand in front of them and say, guys, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, just because he thinks this doesn't make him a fill in the blank. We should ask, why is this issue so important to you? Walk me through. What's your life experience that's caused this to be the most important thing in this political season with you? Tell me about it. Share with me why it is that's the thing that comes to mind every single time you think about politics. Like, I've got to solve this. Walk me through it. That's what we've got to get right. We've got to be known as a church that stands up for people that are being abused verbally or in the workplace or in our families just because they have a different political ideology. Even if we think that their political ideology doesn't align with Jesus, we still have to say, hey, they're still people. They're still people. They're not issues. The people are not issues. People are people that think certain ways about issues. So yeah, the political move. Get rid of people you feel threatened by. The spiritual move. You belong here. You belong here. You belong here even if you challenge my way of thinking. You belong here even if you see things differently than I do. You belong here even if you disagree with my values. You belong here even if your priorities are different from mine. You belong here even if you're passionate about causes I don't understand. You belong here even if you're a Democrat. And you belong here even if you're a Republican. You belong here even if you're an independent. You belong here even if you choose not to vote. You belong here even if you aren't a Christian. You belong here even if you think Christianity is false and Jesus is a fairy tale. You belong here even if you're a politician. You belong here even if you want to make everything political. We have a choice these next 5 weeks. Political move or spiritual move. And that is something you get to vote for yourself every day.